History remembers Rome as an unstoppable force, the legions, the emperors, the empire that ruled the known world. But what if I told you there was a time when Rome's name almost vanished? A time when its soldiers were trapped like animals, forced to bow in shame, not by a mighty empire, but by warriors from the mountains. They fought with no walls, no cities, no rules, and for a moment they held Rome's fate in their hands. This is the story of the Samnites, the enemy that humiliated Rome so deeply it changed the Republic forever. And had the winds of fate shifted, you would never have heard the name Rome at all. Part 1. Before the Empire. Rome. We imagine it as an invincible machine, marble cities, disciplined legions, and banners waving over conquered lands. But in the 4th century BC, Rome was none of that. It was a young republic, ambitious, proud, but still fragile. It was here, in its early climb to power, that Rome met an enemy unlike any it had ever faced. The Samnites. They were mountain warriors, agile, cunning, and ruthless. They didn't fight for expansion, or gold, or fame. They fought for survival, for their land, for a way of life that Rome threatened simply by existing. The Samnites mastered the hills and valleys like an extension of their own bodies. They moved through the forests as if the trees themselves were on their side, and when they struck, they vanished just as quickly, leaving only bodies behind. Rome was used to open battles, to enemies who would line up and meet them head-on. The Samnites did no such thing. They didn't give Rome the fight it wanted. They gave them the fight they feared. And the battle they fought could have erased Rome forever. Do you think Rome could have fallen here before it became an empire? Tell me in the comments. Secret password number 1, Iron in the Hills. Drop it below if you're still with me. Part 2, A Republic on the Edge. The year is 343 BC. Rome's influence is spreading like a shadow over the Italian peninsula. One by one, neighboring peoples are drawn, or forced, into its orbit. But the Samnites, they were different. They were not impressed by Rome's promises nor intimidated by its threats. They saw the Republic for what it was becoming, a dangerous invader, one that would strip them of their independence, their lands, and their way of life. Their home was their greatest weapon, a jagged, unforgiving landscape of steep mountains, narrow passes, and hidden valleys. To outsiders, it was a maze of death. To the Samnites, it was an armor no enemy could pierce. They didn't need towering walls or mighty fortresses. The very earth beneath their feet defended them. Every slope was a rampart, every ravine a trap. Rome had faced enemies before, but always on open ground, where its legions could march in proud formation. Against the Samnites there would be no grand parade of shields and spears. The mountains would strip them of order, break their lines, and scatter their pride. And soon, Rome would learn that the land itself could be an enemy. Part 3, The Spark of War. It began with Capua, a wealthy, thriving city in the fertile plains of Campania, and a proud ally of Rome. When Samnite raiding parties struck Capuan lands, burning fields and scattering livestock, the city's leader sent an urgent plea to the Senate. They didn't just want help, they demanded it. Rome answered. The Senate dispatched its legions southwards, banners high, armor gleaming in the sun. Confidence rolled through their ranks like a marching drumbeat. To them, the Samnites were just another obstacle, a local nuisance to be crushed and forgotten. The legions would march in, deliver a decisive blow, and return to the city in triumph. But there was one thing the Romans didn't yet understand. The Samnites would not meet them on an open field. They would not stand and trade blows in the daylight. They would fight like shadows in the mist, and every step Rome took deeper into their territory would be another step into a predator's lair. Would you dare to march into enemy mountains knowing the enemy can see you, but you cannot see them? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments. Part 4, Into the Trap. The first days in Samnite territory felt deceptively quiet. No armies on the horizon, no banners fluttering in challenge, only the heavy silence of the mountains, and the uneasy feeling of being watched. Then it began. A javelin thrown from nowhere, a scream echoing down a narrow pass. A cohort suddenly halved in the time it takes to draw a sword. The Samnites struck like lightning and vanished like smoke. They knew every bend in the road, every hiding place, every point where a column would be most vulnerable. In narrow valleys, the legions were trapped like cattle in a slaughterhouse. In the dense forest, arrows fell from all directions, their source invisible. On steep mountain roads, great stones tumbled from above, smashing shields and shattering bone. The proud Roman formations, so disciplined, so precise, crumbled under chaos they could not control. Men began to whisper that the mountains themselves were alive, and that the Samnites were its spirits of vengeance. But the worst humiliation was still to come. Part 5, the Caudine Forks. It was the perfect trap, crafted not by brute force but by patience and precision. In 321 BC, the Roman army, under the command of 2 consuls, was lured deep into a narrow mountain pass near a place called the Caudine Forks. At first, it seemed like the quickest route to their next objective. The path was tight, hemmed in by steep cliffs, but it was passable, or so they thought. Halfway through, the Romans realized the truth. The way ahead was blocked, and when they turned back, they found the entrance sealed. From the heights above, Samnite warriors appeared, hundreds, then thousands, their spears aimed downwards, their voices carrying the confidence of hunters with prey already caught. There was no battle to fight, no chance to break through. The Samnite commander, Gaius Pontius, offered a single, merciless choice: surrender unconditionally, or be slaughtered where they stood. Rome, the proud republic, chose to live. Secret password number 2, under the yoke. Type it below if you're still with me. Is humiliation worse than defeat? Tell me what you think in the comments. Part 6, the greatest humiliation. The Samnites could have killed them all, but death in their eyes was too merciful. Instead, they prepared a ritual. One meant not to destroy Rome's body, but to shatter its soul. 2 spears were planted upright in the ground, a third laid across the top, forming a low arch. One by one, every Roman soldier, from the lowest recruit to the highest-ranking general, was forced to remove his armor, bow his head, and walk beneath it. This was the yoke. To pass under it was to admit total defeat. To Rome, it was worse than chains. It was the stripping away of honor. The legions marched home in silence. No songs, no shouts, no victory banners. They avoided each other's eyes, for to look into a comrade's face was to see the same shame reflected back. The Caudine Forks had left a wound so deep it would burn in Rome's memory for generations. And from this shame was born something deadly. Part 7, Rome's transformation. Rome would not live with this disgrace. In the Senate, voices thundered for revenge. Citizens filled the forum, demanding that the humiliation be answered with blood. And in the military camps, veterans spoke in low, bitter tones of the day they were made to bow. The republic began to change. The arrogance that had blinded them in the mountains was burned away, replaced by a cold, focused determination. Every weakness the Samnites had exploited was studied. Every trap they had sprung was analyzed. Rome would not walk into the same snare twice. The message was clear. If the Samnites had taught them how to lose, Rome would now learn how to win in their world. Would you fear an enemy that learns from every mistake? Tell me in the comments. Part 8, Birth of the Manipular Legion. From the ashes of defeat rose a new kind of army. The rigid, block-like formations that had once been Rome's pride were abandoned. In their place came smaller, faster, more flexible units, maniples. Each manipulus could move independently, adapt to the terrain, and strike or withdraw as the battle demanded. No longer would Roman soldiers be trapped by narrow passes or pinned down in valleys. They could now spread out, encircle, or slip away before the enemy's trap could close. This was a revolution in Roman warfare, one forged in humiliation and tempered in cold, calculated planning. The Samnites had been the hunters. Now the balance was shifting, and soon the hunters would become the hunted. Part 9, Turning the Tide. The next campaigns were nothing like the first. When the legions returned to Samnite lands, they moved with the same speed and cunning that had once belonged only to the mountain warriors. They no longer marched blindly into narrow passes. They set their own traps. They no longer allowed themselves to be surrounded. They were the ones closing the circle. The war became a relentless grind. The Samnites found themselves fighting an enemy that had learned every trick, every tactic, and could now use them better than their inventors. Villages were taken, then retaken. Raiding parties that once vanished into the hills were hunted down in the dark. The land that had been their shield now became a battlefield they could no longer control. The tide had turned, and it would not turn back. Secret password number 3, Rome rises. If you're still here, let me know in the comments. Part 10, The Battle of Sentinum. 295 BC. The war for control of Italy reached its breaking point. On one side, the Samnites and their allies, desperate to defend what remained of their power. On the other, a reforged Rome, disciplined, relentless, and ready to finish what had begun decades earlier. The battlefield was a maelstrom of chaos. The clash of iron rang across the plain. War cries mixed with the screams of the dying. Dust and blood choked the air, stinging the eyes and filling the mouth with the taste of copper. The Samnites fought like wolves cornered, every strike driven by fury and desperation. But the new Roman manipular formations cut through them with surgical precision, breaking their lines, isolating their warriors, and striking from every angle. Every advance was a death sentence. Every retreat was met with another blade. By sunset, the earth was littered with bodies. The Samnite resistance had been shattered. If you were there, would you stand your ground? Or run? Tell me below. Part 11, The Final Blow. The Battle of Sentinum broke more than the Samnite army. It broke their spirit. What had begun as a fight for survival had become a war they could no longer win. One by one, their strongholds fell. Their warriors were either cut down in battle or forced to surrender. Allies who had once fought beside them now abandoned the cause, unwilling to share their fate. For Rome, this was more than victory. It was retribution, the long-delayed answer to the shame of the Caudine Forks. The message was clear to every people of Italy. Rome may stumble, but it never stays down, and those who humiliate her will not survive to boast about it. But this was only the beginning. Part 12, The Lesson Written in Blood. The Samnite Wars had given Rome more than territory. They had given her a blueprint for dominance. The Republic had learned that strength alone was not enough. Discipline, adaptability, and the will to endure humiliation without breaking, these were the true weapons of empire. From that moment forward, Rome's enemies knew. You could defeat her once, perhaps even twice, but she would come back sharper, faster, and more dangerous than before. The mountains that had once trapped her legions became training grounds. The tactics that had once humiliated her became part of her own arsenal. And in this transformation, Rome revealed her most terrifying truth. She was not just a power to be feared. She was a predator that learned from every kill and every wound. Secret password number 4, Rome never bows. If you've made it this far, type it in the comments and let me know you're still here. The Samnites fought with courage, cunning, and the advantage of their homeland. They had everything they needed to win, except the one thing Rome possessed in abundance: the refusal to accept defeat. This war was Rome's first great test. It taught her how to adapt, how to strike back harder after a loss, and how to turn humiliation into fuel for conquest. Had the outcome been different, the Rome we know, the Rome of emperors, legions, and empire, might never have existed. Instead, she rose from the mountains of Italy with a lesson carved into her very soul. Rome may bend, but she will never break. And now I ask you, if you stood in the place of the Samnites, would you have surrendered? Or fought until your last breath? If you believe in the unbreakable spirit of Rome, comment our final password: Rome never bows. Like this video if you enjoyed the story, share it with anyone who loves ancient history, and subscribe so you won't miss the next tale of power, betrayal, and survival from the ancient world. And tell me in the comments, what story from history should we uncover next?